Hello, I'm Stan from QATestLab. As usually, we are starting our webinar from representing our today's speakers. They are Ivana, our QATestLab program manager, the one who is responsible for test automation and mobile test automation, which will be a topic of our today's conversation, and Shirley Eleanor Kwok from Genymotion. The guys are doing really cool stuff for those who want to test on mobile devices remotely using really very interesting and different approaches, Genymotion Cloud, which Eleanor will describe today, surely. Our today's topic is hybrid mobile strategy, why to combine virtual and real devices in test automation. As I mentioned, we'll talk about using combined approach with real devices and virtual devices in mobile test automation. And we'll start from Ivana Kirik, who will explain her vision and some part of the approaches guiding this topic. Ivana, please go ahead.
Thank you, Stan. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all here. And today I am going to talk about, I think, the competition between the mobile device emulator and real device. I propose starting from agenda. Today we will talk about emulators and their categories, pros and cons of emulators and real devices, building of hybrid mobile strategy for test automation, implementation of hybrid mobile strategy, CI, parallel testing, it will be demo on Genymotion Cloud, and Q&A session. Today, I will be your first speaker. My name is Ivana Kirik, and I am a program manager in QATestLab. QATestLab is independent provider of QA and testing services. We have 3,000 successful projects, 12 years experience in software testing, more than 200 testers, and 7 offices in our country. So let's start. Development of a mobile market entailed the extensive usage of mobile applications. According to statistics, game applications make half of all supplements, and the other part holds different applications for business, health, commerce, etc. The extensive number of mobile devices and apps for them triggers their quality issues. Clients require effective mobile testing solutions to maintain their application highly quality development and support. First of all, I want to talk about 3 main types of emulators. Emulators are often applied to perform manual and automated application testing. They help to create the necessary testing environment, provide the essential tool set, and are mostly provided by the vendors. First of all, it's device emulator. Device emulator imitates the work of an actual device, creating the necessary testing environment. Browser emulators perform the functions of mobile browsers. They check the functions of mobile application performs in different browsers. And also we have operation system emulators. They simulate the work of necessary operation system to analyze the performance of a defined mobile application. Okay. To emulate is to imitate the system behavior in order to achieve some goal. All main properties and operating principles are maintained. The inner mechanism of an emulator repeats the internal structure of the target device. To emulate means to model a structure of some mechanism and result of their emulator of its functioning. Is a purely virtual reproducing of the program's work. And as we can see at the slide, I want to talk about the advantages of emulators and real devices. And then we will talk about the disadvantages of emulators and real devices. Okay, regarding advantages of emulators. First of all, it's quick to use and convenience for remote team. For example, in our company, we have more than 200 remote employees, and it's very important to have some tools that are convenient to use in remote teams. Simulate both software and hardware. App runs unmodified, simulate the application behavior and detect unexpected behavior. Then can be used for testing during development. And next point is relatively easy to set up. Regarding the real devices, it's testing in real environment conditions, support different lighting scenarios, test on the real operation system with manufacturer's tweaks, easy to replicate bugs, test push notification, and build the scenarios. Also, I want to talk about the disadvantages of real devices and emulators. Regarding emulators, sometimes we can face the razor slow in the emulators. Maybe incompatibility with the app or app elements, possibility to fail test results, additional aspects, battery, incoming interrupts is not always the opportunity to test. And regarding real devices, the main point is high cost of large pack of devices, device fragmentation and diversity of operation system times at versions, require resources for device maintenance, and time consuming to exchange device between offices. In our case, it's very important too, because we have 7 offices and sometimes we have to change devices between offices. And sometimes it requires a lot of time. Also, I want to talk about some examples from our practice, how we use real devices and emulators. We work with real and devices and emulators. In each case, we will pros and cons. If we design with an iOS, there are difficulties connecting a real device. A bundle with Appium is possible, but you need to spend time to set it up. If we consider the iOS emulator in general, everything it's not so difficult. You will need the minimum settings. You need to run Appium so that the emulator of the required version is on Xcode. For example, to run the test on the iPhone 6 under iOS, for example, 10.0, you just need to make sure that the version of is present in Xcode. If we talk about the iOS emulator, we get a high run speed, but a low test launch speed, because if you run a test in a new session, and most often you need it to work on a clean application, it will reopen the emulator each time, which takes time. In this case, the tests themselves run pretty quickly. If we talk about the web automation, it's important to install the cover version of the browser. For example, if you have an x86 platform, you need to install Google Chrome x86 version 2. Its main points of some settings for iOS and browser emulators. Also, we have some experience with Android emulators. From our experience, if we talk the Android emulator, the main pitfall is the problem of speed. The standard emulator is very slow, but installing the HMXM driver or choosing use host GPU when setting up the emulator allows it to be accelerated. In Android emulators, certain installations can be observed. If we talk about the real devices, everything is relatively stable. But in general, problem with unstable runs under the standard emulator can be partly solved with additional batch scripts. They will kill all unnecessary processes before starting the test and start the clean session of Appium and the emulator before running the test group. When I talked about kill all unnecessary processes, I mean which could remain from the previous run. In the case of the emulators for Android, the speed depends on the emulator itself. As an alternative to Android, there is Genymotion emulator, which installs pretty quickly and is faster and more stable and as the standard one. Using Genymotion, you can drive tests in several threads on the one machine, which allows you significantly increase the speed of the pacing test. Okay, maybe that's all examples from my practice. Also, I have I won't give you some conclusion. I think effective testing, which is so present nowadays, requires various conditions and scenarios. Emulators, along with real devices, form the base of a QA process. There isn't a universal solution for using virtual or real devices. The strategy should be developed according to the company aims and specifics, I think. The planned combination of virtual devices and real devices in testing mobile application is one of the most successful decisions. Emulators are useful on early stage of the app development, but real devices are essential while testing before the product's release. Clear plan and strategy can assure the realization of the set goals in the development and testing of a mobile application, I think. Okay, maybe that's all information from my side. Sam, thank you for my help.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ivana, for this information, for practical approach, and I'm sure it's interesting for our attendees. Guys, please write your questions if you have ones, and Ivana and Eleanor will make sure to answer them all after the presentation. Now we are coming to the next stage of our today's webinar. As you already could see, actually to have just devices is never enough to execute a good testing project. You need to think about framework, about other different stuff, and Eleanor will explain how Genymotion Cloud can help to speed up the testing process and to give you a lot of benefits with the demonstration of it. Eleanor, please go ahead.
Thank you, Stan, and thank you, Ivana, for sharing your experience and about your feedback. So you're telling that it is good to have a hybrid mobile strategy using emulators and physical devices at the same time, because we know that the emulators and physical devices complement each other. So I'm Eleanor. I'm from Genymotion team. So here, I will be talking about emulators, but of course, all the best practices I'm going to give also applies to real devices. So just quick introduction about what is Genymotion. Genymotion Cloud are cloud-based Android emulators. So why emulators in the cloud? Because yeah, of course, if you want to speed up your testing, reducing your testing lifecycle, you can imagine that you would run all your tests on as many devices as you want, so to have a better scalability. And with Genymotion Cloud, you will see with the demo that it integrates quite easily into an existing environment. So, so Ivana talked about adopting a hybrid strategy to run the tests. So we have the devices, so we know on which kind of devices we need to run our tests. But we have also other tools such as the automation framework, or on which process do we need to run those tests. So this is also important things to adopt and to have a good strategy on it. So Ivana talked about Appium when she was giving examples, and we see that through our clients that Appium is one of the automation framework that is quite used because it is compatible with running tests on iOS and Android. But we have the framework, we have the devices. Now we need to run them in an efficient way, and the inefficient way is running them on a continuous integration workflow. For some of you, you already know what it is, and this slide may ring a bell. But yeah, let's do a quick recap on what it is and where you have all the interaction between the testing framework, the devices, etc. So basically how it works, we have developers that codes the application. When they finishes a feature, for example, they need to check in the changes into a source control server such as GitHub. Then we have what we call a continuous integration server, such as Jenkins, Bamboo, TeamCity, that will fetch the changes, build the application, and also restart the devices that could be in the cloud, such as with emulators such as Genymotion, or just run the tests on physical devices. Then when the tests are finished, it will return if it failed or it was successful, and it will notify the developers and also the queue manager if the tests were successful. So here, this is a continuous integration workflow that you would have for your smoke test or so before the release, and depending on your use case, it would run on emulators or on physical devices. So here we have we automate our tests, but we also need to run them in parallel. Why? Because we want to effectively test and to reduce the testing lifecycle. So yeah, just imagine that you would need to run one test on different kind of configurations, and you would do it once at a time. You can imagine that it would take quite a long time. So what if you could just run the test at the same time on several devices? So that's why parallel testing is all about. And with emulators, the great advantage is that you can easily scale, and also in the cloud you can easily scale and run as many devices as you want. So now, let's do a quick demo about it. So before the webinar, I started 2 devices. So this is our SaaS platform. I started 2 devices, Test and Test 1, which has an application pre-installed on them. So this is just for the purpose of the demo, because you can imagine that when you run your test within a CI workflow, you won't really see what is going on in live on the devices. But this is for the purpose of the demo, so that you can see that the test that I'm running from my computer run in the cloud. I'm also going to show you the background of all of it. So here on the right are started 2 devices from a command line, which is GM tool that handles the lifecycle of the virtual devices in the cloud. So when we start the devices in the cloud, there is a connection that is done directly with the devices in the cloud, so that the test that you would run locally will also run in the cloud easily. Why? Because for those who are know a bit about Android, we have this 80. Oh, okay. Something. Okay, maybe I have a disconnection. Let me do something again. I'm going to stop everything. Yeah, something wasn't really started good. So I'm going to start them again. Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to start again 2 devices. So I'm going to show them to you here and there. So we're waiting for them to start. Okay, I have 1 device. Okay. Okay, first device started successfully. Waiting for the second. Okay, the second also started successfully. You can see that my devices are connected. So here also what I did is that I started an Appium server. So for those who are not really familiar about Appium, is that we have just a server that will handle all the commands from my computer to the devices in the cloud. So the Appium server relies on the Appium framework that will automate all the interactions. And then I'm just going to run my tests. You will see that the Appium server will fetch some commands and will send them to the devices in the cloud. You can see here that some things are happening, and you will also see it on the devices. So there will be like a Riddle app that will be launched. It is going to do some interaction on them. And you can see that my test was successful. So here I did parallel testing. I run my tests on 2 devices at the same time. So you could imagine that you could run them on as many devices as you want. I hope that this part was informative, and then you could see more in practice how we could implement some strategy to better test our scale and to reduce the testing lifecycle. So I will let Stan conclude our talk today.
Yeah, Lars, thank you very much for your part of the presentation with practical demos, and it's really quite impressive. And yeah, now everyone actually can see the contacts of Genymotion and QATestLab. Please feel free to contact both companies in case if you need kind of consultancy or services, products we just discussed. We are always open to share with you all the information and support you. And now we actually can proceed with our Q&A session. As we promised, we have a couple of questions from the audience that I see. The first one is from Eric. I guess, do you wanna mainly wanna how often do you use emulators for testing?
Eric, thank you for the question. In our company, we have separate department. It's automation department. We provide automation testing, and the half of project we have a mobile project. That's why we use emulators almost on every project, on every mobile project, as the client always wants to know the system behavior in several environments. That's why I think we use emulators every day, but on half of our projects. Thank you, Eric, for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Ivana, for the answer. And another one from Kate. It's to Eleanor mainly, I guess. Do you have a trial period or so? And do you provide any training?
Yes, of course, we provide a trial period. So yeah, we can reach you out and see, yeah, and have a training about this and hands-on demo. And we can also work with QATestLab if you want more about your testing practices. Yeah, that's why we are doing this webinar together, is to join all your strength together. But yeah, we can have a trial period, and we will reach you out after the webinar.
Okay, Eleanor, thank you very much. Actually, yeah, Eric just thanked for the answer as well. Maybe one question from my side, I guess mainly to you, Eleanor. If to compare, let's say, some kind of real device farms, which is comparatively popular now, what are the key differences and benefits of using Genymotion Cloud instead of such a real device farms, which also give a big variety of devices?
Okay, so yeah, basically what we see is that, yeah, people use both real devices farm and cloud devices farm, but in terms of scaling and to be able to run on as many devices as one, it is better because it's faster. You don't need to wait for physical devices to be available, etc. So, and when you want to just test main features that don't really rely on real devices, yeah, sometimes it's cheaper also. It's cheaper and faster to do it on emulators.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Thank you for the answer. I guess we shall end up our webinar now. You're always welcome for our further webinars, and thank you for participating in this one. Thank you very much, Eleanor. Thank you, Ivana, for joining me today and for very interesting and useful speeches. I'm sure we've provided the audience with a really good, informational, valuable webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Thank
Bye.
you for attending.
Bye.